Hello again, it's Anne Miles from Asperger's Fitting In. Today I'm going to talk to you about strategies. Now, strategies are just ways we do things. Now, all of us do strategies often and in all sorts of different occasions. You know, when we go shopping, when we get into study mode, when we start to start to worry about something and we act a certain way, we're always using what I call is strategies. So what the great thing about strategies is once we know that we do a strategy, then we can actually break the cycle and put in a new strategy that's much more healthy. So really today I'll just talk to you about strategies and help you know how to start looking for them, recognise it and break those strategies and replace them with new, more resourceful ones. Sometimes our Asperger's have strategies for excitement and perhaps in some occasions it's flapping and it's, waving around and getting all excited. It's great to get excited. It's also, perhaps in my view, it's a little inappropriate to be flapping. If those of you have heard, or some of you may have heard already, that my son did used to flap in exciting moments and also fearful moments, and after many years now he does not flap at all. So what I realised that I was doing was I broke his strategy. So what he did, and what all of us do, is when we start to feel a certain way, then over time we act in a cycle. So it begins with one thing, then it steps into another, and it steps into another, and it leads to another, and then it results in something finally. So say, I've got other emotions here: fear, sadness, overwhelm is really a big one where strategies are a big factor. It's also learning, and it's also about falling in love as well. So there's all sorts of occasions where strategies are in place. What we need to work out is it a healthy strategy or is it an unhealthy strategy? So when we know that there is an unhealthy strategy in place, and I call flapping an unhealthy, unresourceful strategy, I think it's a little bit socially unacceptable. I think it makes them really stand out as looking quite different than other children or other people. And so I feel if you can help them learn a new strategy around that, then that will be better for them to fit in. So say for fearfulness, what will happen, it will be a very complex strategy, a complex process. It will begin with a thought in their mind perhaps. The first thought might be that something is different, something is changing, perhaps they might start to create a, what would I call it, like a fantasy, a fictional outcome where it might be so exaggerated and extreme. For example, someone who's really nervous about weather, bad weather, wind and rain for example, starts off by having a thought in their head, and they might be recalling images of news broadcasts where people are in cyclones, or a movie that they've seen that has, like Twister or something, where it's, a big hurricane or whatever, and then they associate that with what they're experiencing in that moment. So when you start to break down in tiny little detail what it is that they're doing that gets them to this final outcome of a flap or a freak out or a meltdown, so step back with them. So try and observe yourself what they're doing. When they're young, they can't necessarily articulate that to you, but it'll be easy and evident if you can really start to piece it together. You'll know that, for example, they'll start to look anxious and, look around for solutions or somewhere to go, and then they'll do something else, and then it'll finally result in the big meltdown. So the great thing about strategies is if you can backtrack and work out the starting point. Where is the first point that they start to go off track? And then at that point replace it. Give them a new thing to do and a new strategy and move them off the path. And it might be a really simple distraction, a new way to do it call on a resource anchor. We've talked about anchors in other videos here. You know, call on that when they need it early enough that the whole strategy doesn't play out. So then they can also put in a new one. So say for example, also for homework, you know, if part of their strategy is that they start to think of it as a huge big drama, and they start to like sink their body and huff and roll their eyes and complain, that's all part of a strategy. So take it back, go to the beginning where their body starts to slump, for example, and stop it. Get them to jump up and down, do star jumps, put their finger up their nose and jiggle, whatever it takes to break that state, and get them to go into a new path. So that strategy, like an anchor, is actually a set of neural pathways growing a really common groove. So much like a trickle of water, when it's continually run along in the same path, it actually becomes a river and then it gets stuck. So the idea is just to make a new little river, a new little trickle going off to the side to a different direction, and then start to make that a really common, easy thread to follow. So then they'll have a new strategy to take on board to help them get past those obstacles that they might have had before. I trust that fits.